I'm yours. With you. 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 Yours. I'm yours. With you. I'm yours. With you. I'm yours.
10th, 2022, sorry, 2021 meeting of the HHA. We have a pretty packed agenda, so I'm going to quickly go through, do a roll call. Commissioner Bala here, Commissioner Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Wolf,
Here.
Commissioner Cousin.
Here.
I know you're Commissioner Borer.
Here.
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
And Commissioner Brown. Okay. See if he joins us later. Okay, first order of business. First of all, I said welcome already, but welcome again. First order of business, moving right along, is to approve the meeting minutes for January. I know there were some changes made, and I don't know, has everybody gotten that the revised document? And did everybody have a chance to take a look at that? And if there are any questions regarding the meeting minutes from last month, please speak up, or comments, questions.
Yeah, this is just the meetings as amended.
The what, sorry?
Or the minutes as amended, right?
Yes, meetings as amended. Yep, so this is the version that was sent out a couple of hours ago.
Okay, good.
Okay, assuming that everybody's had a chance to read it and everybody's good with the amended meeting minutes, I'd like a motion to approve the meeting minutes, please.
I'll make that motion to approve.
I'll
the meeting
second.
minutes.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the meeting minutes have been entered into. Okay, next, yes.
Sorry, quickly, I do want to make a comment. I was on the website today and the links to the meeting minutes actually weren't working on the website, just so you know.
We know. Yep,
Yeah.
those are gonna be, Tim, I think those are gonna be up this week, right?
Mhm.
Or the meeting minutes are gonna be linked up this week.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just
Marie.
because we're updating the website. Yes,
Can we just
heard-
ask that everybody that's not a part of the board meeting mute their phone so that we don't have any more comments about appearances?
yes. Yep,
Thank
could
you.
we, if you are not on the board, please mute your phone. That would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is the budget. Has everyone had an opportunity to take a look at those documents? And assuming that people have had a chance to take a look at them, can we actually get those just up on the screen real quick? Is that possible? If not, I think we can probably approve them without, obviously, if there's anyone that has any questions or comments,
do
please
have a
let me know.
comment.
Yep.
Yeah. So one of the things that was requested last time was to have more itemization on the maintenance supplies. And I think this is going to be really important moving forward, especially as we're moving to get all of these units online. We're going to need to know exactly, what we have, what we're spending to make sure that, the money that we're allocating is the right amount of money, all of that. It's just going to be a better thing to have more magnification there. So Tim, if we can just make sure for the next month, would really like to see more magnification in the maintenance supplies itemized list as we
Gotcha.
discussed
Yep.
last time. Yeah.
This is so Tim, let me ask you a question because I do see a pretty itemized list. Does that meet some of that? I don't, it's 4420, page 1 of the general ledger. There's a pretty extensive breakdown of materials
Yeah, I
and
would.
maintenance supplies.
Yeah, a lot of the time it's just MX supplies, which is just kind of miscellaneous supplies, which means that we're not getting to see what those supplies are. And so that's what I would request.
Yep, that's fine. I think that this one looks like that unknown has been removed. So just looking at it now. But yeah, we will definitely continue to break the maintenance ledger down to a detail, and we're obviously going to need to do that as we keep moving forward. So yeah, definitely. Any other comments on the books, on the accounts? Nope. Okay, can I have a motion to accept the budget.
I'll make a motion.
Can I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Uh, Claire, that you made a motion, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, the accounts pass. Sorry, I'm just got too many papers here. Okay, the third item on the agenda is the NYSERDA fridge grant, and Michael Shimides is here to sort of give us a little bit of a background on that. And we have a resolution to accept this grant, but so I'm not going to go into details. So I'll give Michael an opportunity to just sort of update the board on where we are with that and a little background on it.
Yeah,
Michael?
Hi. So
Hi.
the city had an opportunity to apply for an energy production grant from NYSERDA, which is a state agency which is responsible for doing some energy projects. And sort of consulting what the options were, we determined that partnering with the housing authority on the purchase of new fridges was the best option available. One is that it actually replacing the old refrigerators with new refrigerators is actually a pretty massive energy improvement. Sort of replacing these old appliances with new appliances saves a huge amount of carbon dioxide. It actually literally saves tons of emissions. Has an additional benefit of helping the housing authority, both its residents and sort of the overall mission. My understanding is that there's a lot of old fridges, and so this actually gives people an opportunity to reap the benefits of green technologies, where people can have new fridges that are in better quality, and that it saves the housing authority. Partnering with the housing authority, we estimated about $5,000 annually in energy costs, which means that those costs can be reinvested in either, operating data, yearly operating expenses, or it could be sort of saved up for capital projects. So all in all, that seemed like a real win for a lot of people. The other thing that NYSERDA was pushing for was innovation projects in this, in the field. And actually, this is a fairly uncommon thing to do with these kinds of grants, which is to partnering with public housing is not typically done with these grants, and also doing sort of things like refrigerators is also fairly not common. So I think it kind of stands out as sort of a different way of approaching things, and we think that's actually a real positive. So we're excited to be partnering with the Housing Authority on this project, and I think it'll benefit a lot of residents. So the current status that we're at is that NYSERDA has indicated very strongly that we're likely to get this grant. We're basically passing back and forth a contract document. We're finalizing that document. And so what the city wants to do is to sign a contract with the Housing Authority. So the Housing Authority will basically carry out the Housing Authority's portion of the grant. And the city would also sign a contract with NYSERDA to receive the money. And there's a small project that's not related to the Housing Authority that's also attached to that project. So that's where we're at. And we're hoping to have the Housing Authority's approval to sign this contract with the city. And the Housing Authority would then would basically replace a bunch of fridges. The Housing Authority would be donating the labor of the installation costs and the removal of the refrigerators, and then the cost for the purchase of the refrigerators would almost entirely be reimbursed by the grant. And then the Housing Authority would be responsible for reporting. So you would basically be giving us enough information, giving the city enough information, so we could then pass that information on to NYSERDA to complete the grant.
And just so you know, I've contacted several potential appliance dealers. I mean, obviously 35 fridges, it's surprising actually how difficult it can get to get a bunch of fridges all at once. But I am told that it's standard policy to remove the fridges, and they recycle the old fridges as well. So that is, Lowe's does it. Home Depot does it. It's pretty standard operating procedure, because we had sort of talked about what happens with the removal. It has to be done in an environmentally sensitive way, and that is already part of the way that they do these larger, when they sell large numbers of fridges and they remove them. It's part of the way that they already do it. Just thought I would make that clear. We are not going to be responsible for doing that removal. That would be done by who we buy them from. Does anybody have any questions? No
It's
questions.
really exciting.
Cool. So, are we making a motion then to accept the NYSERDA grant and also Tim has taken a look at all of the reporting requirements. And I think, Tim, you are comfortable with all the reporting requirements, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, can we make a motion to accept the NYSERDA grant and to move forward with that?
Right, to sign a contract with the city.
Okay, so we're gonna make a motion to sign a contract with the city to move forward with the NYSERDA grant.
I'm making
Okay.
that motion. Rebecca.
Okay.
Cool.
Can I have a
second
second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? Excellent. Motion passes, so we will, I guess you'll be in touch with Tim with the contract, Michael. All right,
Yes.
okay, thank you very much.
I'm sorry,
Thank
Mike, do you
you.
know how long before we would find out whether that was happening or not?
I think a matter of weeks or possibly days. But Rebecca, you may know that sometimes grants will tell you that it's right around the corner, and then it turns out to be many months away.
Yeah.
But the indication is that we would know within a couple days to a couple weeks.
Cool.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda.
Marie.
Yes,
if,
sorry. Yes,
Sorry
of
to
course.
interrupt.
No,
We
please.
have our guests, which is Dara and Swanee, and I'm
Uh-huh,
thinking
oh.
they're all the way down to 8. Could we possibly put them up to right? You know what I mean?
Do it right. We can do it right now, actually, since we have a
Okay.
guest. Yeah. Okay. Do you want to just introduce that, Ravonda? And then we'll just,
I can, sure. So, and I know I saw Swanee come on. Dara, are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Dara.
Hi.
Dara and Swanee are here. They are part of a holistic wellness program. And they wanted to provide beautiful herbal and just nice home remedies due to the COVID-19 hitting so hard at this time. And as we know, it definitely hits hard for the colored communities. So this is something that they would really like to do for the housing tenants. And I'm gonna let Dara and Swanee take the floor.
Okay. Thank you, Vonda. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is what we're doing is growing a network of BIPOC herbalists and wellness professionals. And so Swanee is located right in Hudson and is, making connections and, offering plant medicine and those modalities already there. So my role is that I'm trying to be a kind of central nervous system for the network so that folks can gather and share resources. And the idea is that we're not trying to say we are fixing COVID, but I mean, I can personally attest to, I was sick this summer with a kind of intense case of COVID. And I had really powerful herbal supports that I believe, not only supported my recovery, but also kept me from having any knockwood long-term, effects afterwards. And so I felt tremendously supported. It was also the relationship between myself and the herbalist who kept, really in touch with me. And so what we're hoping to do in this network is really have these personal one-to-one relationships with folks so that folks can find out what can I do to protect Whoops.
I think we lost you somehow.
Yeah.
Oh, you're back. You're back.
Okay, yeah, my internet seems to be a little unstable. But yeah, so our mission is to establish relationships with folks who are really concerned about, strengthening their immune system, staying healthy, and if they should contract the virus, what can they do to really help heal around that. And so it's really about the relationships that we're trying to build with folks, and then the wisdom and the knowledge that a lot of these plant healers bring. And I'll mention that in our growing network, we have 2 herbalists who are also certified nurses, Issa Coffey and Marguerite Ullman Bauer, who both have many years working as nurses as well. So it's really incredibly valuable because they can talk about all sorts of, protocol that, meets certain expectations. And we had tried to establish, have a first connection with folks at Bliss Towers in December. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. But, now with things changing, I think we're going to have to figure out new ways of doing it, whether it's Zoom or whatever. I mean, we're completely open to ideas. But the main thing is we just really want people to know about us and be able to ask questions, and for us to be able to also channel resources. One of the things that we're doing is fundraising and starting social media conversation about wellness, and really with the focus on Black, Indigenous, people of color, those communities initially, because as we know, the numbers are the worst in those communities. But, really all folks who are underserved eventually, I hope. But that's what we're about. And so I'll stop talking and ask Swanee if you're here, if you want to jump in. Just looking, I know she told me she would join, but she was also in transit, so her call might have dropped. I don't see her. So yeah, I mean, that's the just kind of sketch of what we're doing. Happy to answer questions.
I actually have a question. When you say you started something in December, what was it, and what was I presume it was COVID that kind of made that difficult, but what was the biggest challenge?
Oh, well, so actually we've been talking about this since April and trying to organize and figure out how to proceed. And we had tried to have, a very limited, engagement with folks in Bliss, and tried to reach out, but we didn't get any takers. We didn't get any folks saying they were interested. So we just decided to regroup, the holidays and all the stuff that happened, and I got back in touch with Vonda, and that's how I ended up here. Yeah.
So I had explained to her that not only do they deal with just COVID-19, they deal with health issues, period. Which my father has a ton of health issues. So he was so interested in Dara. And I learned that there was no flyers, no one knew about it. I just learned from her because I was able to she was connected through Tiffany Garriga, gave her my information. And I was like, wow, this sounds like something I would want to do. So I invited her to come on here and just say the things she was saying to me, and show us why she should be connecting with the tenants and helping her by either putting flyers around and all that types of stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think it might be worth doing something on the calendar? I mean, Dara, would you be interested in, if we had something on the HHA calendar, maybe you could have a sort of community Zoom meeting to start, or something like that? Would that be something you'd be interested in doing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So why don't you and me and Ravonda talk at some point about scheduling something like that and getting it on the calendar?
Okay. That's perfect. And Ravonda has my contact information, so yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we're really open to any suggestions as to how to proceed, because of course, we're all contorting ourselves into all sorts of shapes to do things now. But
Yep,
so
we are.
really open to that.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions they'd like to ask Dara?
I just want to say I think it'd be a really amazing resource, and thank you for bringing that to the residents of the housing authority.
Yeah. Yes. You're welcome. Thank you. I mean, it's a deeply heartfelt initiative. And actually, you can find us on Instagram if anyone here likes Instagram. We're the PWI Initiative, the People's Wellness Initiative. I think that's our handle. We have some media wizards down in Brooklyn who set this up, and
Ooh,
yeah,
we need some media wizards.
I know. They're doing a lot of other things, so we can't always get their magic, but without them, it would be a lot harder. So
Yeah.
So that would be great. Thank you. Look forward to
Right.
that conversation.
Thank you, Dara. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay. Unless anyone has any other questions for Dara, we'll be in touch, and we'll get something on that calendar and get something started. It sounds great. Okay. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. We have update, obviously, on the work of the development committee and the workshops. There have been, I think, 3 since the last meeting. Is that right? Have there been 3 since the last meeting?
Yes.
Wow, wow, wow. Time flies. I don't know, Rebecca, do you want to get us rolling on that and give us a little bit of an update of what's been going on there?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So last week at our meeting, we had Darren Scott come in, and he helped us go through a lot of different questions that we had, and specifically outlining some possibilities, for public resources on State Street. So talking about, the possibilities of a YMCA. Specifically. And so I did follow up with David Brown from the Capital Region YMCA, but I have not heard back from him yet. So I don't have anything to report on that, sadly, but next week, definitely, most hopefully, I will have something to report, and hopefully a date where he will come in and talk to us. So I guess some of the big things that we really went through, and kind of the real outline that we created is really this timeline for development, and so how we're going to move forward with this timeline. And so, I guess I can just walk us through the timeline and kind of talk about some of the revisions that will need to happen, as well as we're moving into like really a real community plan, working with our residents. So we need to work with our residents, we need to work with our development, it needs to work hand in hand. So there's a lot of questions that we can't answer until we have the input of our residents. And so that's why we're kind of going to shift a little bit around with our timeline, because there's some exciting possibilities, particularly for assistance on our survey. We'd like to do a survey of our residents to ask a couple of specific questions, and we're hoping that HCHC will be able to help us with that. So I can also outline some of the guidelines there and some of the things that we were thinking about, and possibly even Tiffany, if you're here today and would want to speak to that in a moment, just know that we're going to have that little space to talk about this tonight. So yeah, the development timeline. We are now February 10th. The hope was to have this RFQ in existence March 15th. That's my goal. That's my hope. That's our plan. However, we need to have this happen in tandem with our resident outreach. And so I think that date is going to end up having to be more flexible to the April-May sector of this year, which, we want to get moving, but we want to do it right. And so that's the most important aspect of it. It needs to move fast, but it needs to be done properly. And so that's why I just want to let you all know tonight that I think there's going to be a little wiggle room that we need in there while we're getting our survey together and while we're making sure that we have all of the resident input. So that takes us from so April April to May is when we would have our RFP, RFQ, depending on what it ends up being. And just to reiterate this to everyone, we're having these weekly development meetings to build this proposal publicly. So that's what we're talking about with these affordable housing development meetings. These are weekly meetings where you can come in, you give your input on this specific project and the possibilities for it. So April to May.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
About how I know that in the buildings, like there's flyers that go out about, but I mean there's regular what's the word, announcement of regular meetings, right? That are via flyers. And so I'm just wondering, um, I guess my question would be like, are we going to have a specific time where we can really try to plan out the outreach that we're gonna do to really get resident input?
Yeah, we
Like,
have to.
yeah, so I'm curious if maybe our next development meeting is gonna focus on like how we're actually gonna get that input.
So
Well,
this is, oh yeah, sorry, Claire.
that's okay. So me and Rebecca have been talking about how we're gonna, because whoever's interested in helping with the tenant relations committee is going to be the folks that are gonna do the outreach. So I've been trying to think of how to do it in a meaningful way, because passing out flyers is great, but it's not engaging. And when you're talking about recreating somebody's living space, you want them as engaged as possible. So we're trying to figure it out. One idea that we threw out was like setting up meeting times and letting tenants, like passing out a flyer with how to contact us for meeting times, and setting up a bunch of dates and times that blocks of time that we'd be available, and in a socially distant way, meet with residents face to face. But we haven't tied any of that down yet. We're brainstorming a bunch of different things. So if you have suggestions, yeah, just like email, call, whatever. But we're trying to figure it out how to do it in a meaningful way.
Cool. Were you talking about like setting up one-to-one kind of meetings, or like the board?
Yeah. Discuss like doing, have, I guess each floor, you could have 2 people at a time or a pod at a time to come in and have a commissioner there or 2 commissioners there to make it the most minimum amount of people possible, and to basically create it so you make sure that there's a space for people to see us face to face and to talk about these issues and talk about what's going on. And what the potentials are, what the plans are, all of this stuff. And so I think that exactly what Claire said, the hope is to do that in tandem with a survey. So a survey that would be done by the Hudson Catskill Housing Coalition that would help us to survey all of our residents in order, or as many as possible, really. And so, there's a real possibility to create this, tonight, right? So to basically, pay HCHC for this service of assisting us with this survey, helping us develop what this survey is going to be. So we would have a meeting to develop this survey. And Tiffany, I see your hand is up. Do you want to speak to this?
I think this is an excellent idea. Mostly all of the members from HCHC, we have this experience already communicating with the people and doing our outreach. We already have been discussing it, and that's the main plan, is to make sure we get to each and every single resident in Bliss Towers and outside of Bliss Towers with the low rise apartments. And once we get that going, we can even go even further to get even more output. But the plan is, of course, socially distanced in that manner, making sure that everyone has that opportunity to communicate and express the needs, even the wants, and have an opportunity for the board members to overlook it and make the right decisions for what the people are requesting and seeing the actual needs.
Yeah. And so, we'd be getting this information, and it seems like the best way for us to do this, especially because data handling is so specific, and, really the data analysis aspect is like really what is the most time consuming and therefore the most expensive part of this process. HCHC has said that they will help us to put this survey out and that we would be able to get this information and we will analyze this information ourselves, you know, as the board. And so in the interest of that, I would think that, you know, it would be anonymous surveys, but it would be a survey specifically of residents. But we just have to figure out how this is really going to function. And obviously all of these things are subject to approval by us, by HCHC's board. And, you know, nothing is really fully there yet, but like this is a very pivotal aspect of us moving forward. You know, and HCHC, you know, as we know, would do an amazing job. So it's an exciting prospect. And thank
So-
you, Tiffany.
We're looking forward to it, and thank you.
So I propose that, you know, I mean, that we should, so I think most of you probably are aware that we still have money left. We were awarded a grant from the HUD to use, you know, to help us with services during the time of COVID, and we do have money left in that budget. And since we are unable to conduct outreach in the traditional way, we're going to have to do it COVID style. I recommend that we should allocate money from that budget to do this outreach. And we just have to be conscious of the fact that we can spend up to $5,000 without going out for a competitive bid. So we just have to, you know, be conscious of how much we spend with one organization without doing that. So what I'd like to do at this, just to propose that we allocate, that we make that we make a resolution now to allocate, I would like to say $3,000 from the pandemic budget for the purposes of developing this plan, working with HCHC, and we could do that now. And then at our development meeting next week, we can really begin to plan this out with HCHC. So I just want to see how the board feels about doing that.
I feel great about that. I think that's a great idea.
I think that's a good idea.
I feel good about it.
Okay. All right. So quickly, I just want to make a proposal to allocate $3,000 from the HUD pandemic budget to do outreach. And by the way, we can add to that later, but just for now, we'll allocate $3,000, and we can look later on if we need to add more, we can talk about doing that. But for now, let's just make a resolution to allocate $3,000 for public outreach. Do I have a
Make that resolution.
second?
I'll
Can I get a
second.
second? Anyone who approves, please say aye. Yep. Did you want to say something, Rebecca?
Yeah, I just want to say something first. Just in the case of a possible conflict of interest, Claire, I would think maybe don't vote on this one.
That's
Yeah.
probably a good idea. I was actually gonna, yeah,
No, I wasn't.
yeah, that's true. Great. Thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah, so all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
I
Anyone opposed, please say nay. Okay, resolution passes. That doesn't end this conversation, by the way. I just wanted to make sure I did that before I forgot to do that. So Rebecca or Ravonda, do we want to add anything else to this discussion on the update on the development committee?
Well,
And
if
is
you
there
have
any,
some- Oh,
yeah.
Rhonda, if you have something to throw in, because I'll just give the timeline and then we can move on from this topic.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, okay, so now that we have a clearer pathway, for assistance with, you know, resident outreach. So, you know, the real hope is that, you know, we get the survey, we get this information, we have these meetings, they're public, people are coming, we're getting more and more input, and then we're building our request. And so now we have our request. It's April, it's May, you know, one of those months, you know, we want this to happen swiftly, fast, we want it to be done right. So we have this.
You're the sports announcer. It's like, and the play is coming around the bed, the bases are loaded. Sorry.
It's just really exciting. I don't want it to sound dry because it's so exciting, you know. You gotta so yeah, okay, so the request will then exist. Our request for proposals or qualifications, whatever it ends up being, you know, and I'm hoping, you know, at our next meeting next week, we'll start to really unpack that specific thing. So what does that mean? What is the proposal? What is the qualifications? How are we going to break this down? Because I think it's going to really help for people to understand this, because as you know, you go to different public city meetings, people are always making these sorts of requests. So I think it's a good thing for the public to know about. And so we'll have this existing in April and May. Then May to June, we'll have a space for public comment, back and forth, scrutiny, all the good stuff. And then, you know, hopefully then by June to July, we'll have the request, it's ready to go. And so then we have, we said like a 30 to 45 day rolling deadline for the different developers to come in to tell us, you know, whatever information it is that we are requesting of them. And so by that time, we will have this list of developers by July to August. So from there, we will now have to really begin, you know, because we can go with all of these developers and we can show the public who they are, why, you know, we've already built into this plan is the fact that we've already built out our criteria for the developers. So we'll have our criteria set. It'll be very clear why we choose who we choose, but that will be a very public process as well. So then once we have that developer, we've chosen the developer, we are landing now in an August to September instead of the, I guess maybe September, October there. I'm sorry, this is all a flexible temporal chain. So we need like a physical artifact in order for us to keep this, you know, so you can hold us accountable and have it on the website and all of that stuff. But let's just say we've chosen the developer around September with the public. Okay. And then after we've chosen the developer, then we get the architectural drawings, right? So then it was said that typically 30 days turnaround is an acceptable turnaround for, you know, most developers. So then now we're landing in October to November. We have a project and then we take a month to go through it with the public again to say, you know, all of the different things that will arise there. And then now we're in November to December, and then we're at the planning board. And I just think, you know, it'll be good to allot ourselves more time at the planning board than less time. We were saying 2 to 4 months, but I really think it's more like 4 to 6, you know?
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
Okay.
And that's okay. Thank you, Ramonda.
Yeah, absolutely. That is okay.
Yeah.
And that is okay. So now we're landing in April 2022, the year that Marie wants it to be.
Yay!
We will have a project. We will have not only the drawings, we will have the scrutiny of the public, of our residents. It will be a community project. And April 2022, we will be quote unquote shovel ready, as they say. So that's the update. Yeah. And hopefully we'll have David Brown in next time as well.
Just
Thank
a
you,
quick
Rebecca.
comment about, can I just make a quick comment about the planning board? I do think that we should start engaging them early on as well as we start to build this out. So there's not going to be any surprises when they get the plan, if you
Yeah,
will.
I
They
think
will
that's a-
already be aware of it.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And last night at the meeting, there was someone that came in with a project that was really just an idea.
Mhm.
And they came up to the board and really just asked kind of, you know, what are you thinking about this, you know, this sort of thing. So I would hope, you know, I would say that's exactly what we should do in our baby stages. Really, once we've gotten this request together, maybe once we have a better understanding of the developers, I would say that's the stage that we should really begin talking to them.
I think even the RFQ, RFP stage, once we're ready with that, we should just let them know. And I think we should also let the council know. I think everybody should be just aware when we go through the major stages, RFQ, selection, development. So those are the 3 big stages.
Yeah.
as far as outreach to planning board and city
Okay, I'm
council.
gonna note that. The other thing, just to bring up quickly, there's this ongoing discussion about the Verizon antenna with Providence Hall, and there was discussion of people wondering whether or not HHA residents had actually been informed of this project and had a chance to lend their voice to this issue. And I, said that if there was, a need for that, that we would be able to assist, in making sure that residents had their voice in this on this project. So I just I from my understanding, the board was made aware of this. It was prior to me joining the board. But the board was made aware of this. Were the residents made aware of this?
So I can kind of answer that question. There has been no direct outreach to the tenants primarily because I think most of us don't know where this particular plan is in the planning stages. So I think we should do something, uh, make sure that if it looks, I mean, are we literally at this point able to, is there an actual mechanical way or mechanical, but way that we can submit a comment as a board on behalf of our tenants, to
Yes,
the planning board regarding that? Because I'm wondering if that's what we should do.
yes,
Yeah.
Well, Tiffany, you have your hand up. Do you want to speak to this?
yes. I wanted to say absolutely, yes, you can send communication to the board in regards of how you feel they should support or not support this proposal. If you have a chance to rewind and watch that portion of the meeting that took place last night with the planning board, it was extremely interesting to watch and to listen to the attorney that represents the planning board speak on behalf. Extremely interesting. And I also wanted to make a suggestion. The Hudson Terraces, they have a newsletter that they create to their
Mm.
and they put it in their mailboxes and circulate it. That doesn't mean everyone reads it, but they do receive it. I think the board should take some time and maybe communicate with the Hudson Terraces and see how they came about to do that and recreate that with Bliss Towers. Um, I think it would be much easier than the terraces to do that, being that the mailboxes are all on one floor for the building and just several outside the building. But I think it'll be a better way in helping all of us out and with communicating because I for one have been speaking to people within the building, but that doesn't mean that it's reaching everyone. So I think a newsletter should be considered. And as far as a response to the board, the planning board on behalf of HHA that's speaking on behalf of the residents, yes, please do. That's what they want and that's what they need.
So in the informal common council meeting, this was talked about. I'm pretty sure I have that meeting right in my memory. And the council attorney brought up an issue about, like, I mean, if I understood what he was saying correctly, essentially it's not like basically whatever, if it's the FCC or which government agency controls stuff like this, the FCC, I think. Essentially, it's like, or Tom, hold on, let me see if I can get this. Basically, if there's an objection raised based on numbers that are like covered by the FCC already, the objection is not considered like viable, according to Jeff. So go ahead, Tom.
Yes, as Tiffany probably noticed at the planning board meeting, they hired a counsel who basically disagrees with Jeff Baker's
Ah,
view. Right, Tiffany? You there?
Absolutely. That's why I was debating him at the meeting.
Yeah.
With my experience on the council, we pretty much know the do's and the don'ts of, what we are supposed to do as far as communicating to the public. And they want those type of responses. They want that communication. but the decision is ultimately up to the board. But they need, that's the only way, that's how we work. We get communications for the public. Doesn't necessarily mean that's the way the decision will be made, but it helps.
Mhm. And that attorney you're saying is not in agreement with that interpretation?
Correct.
Correct.
Cool.
I mean, we're not taking a side here, just, Jeff is on the more traditional view, and the attorney they hired has an alternate view of how you can proceed in these cell tower debates.
It's definitely an interesting thing. It's located on Hudson City Zoom meetings, but just in the interest of the Hudson Housing Authority, let's keep on with our meeting here. Sorry, it's me, Mom.
So we've gone through the sort of the timeline, the basic timeline, which I do promise I'm going to buy Excel and do this physically on a piece of paper. I can't wait. Does anybody actually have Excel on this board? Oh, Rebecca, we'll talk tomorrow. Maybe I can figure out some way to, I don't know, use your Excel.
Yeah,
Because I
or
don't have it.
I can make a basic spreadsheet. I don't know what
Let's-
you need.
That's what I was gonna do. I was gonna just do a base. Let's talk about this. So maybe you and I can do that together if you've
Sure.
got a little bit of time. I know you're pretty busy, but I don't want to add more to your schedule. But yeah, okay, so let's chat about that tomorrow. Just physically getting something on paper that we can easily revise as needed through the Excel program. Okay. All right. Ravonda, do you want to speak to some other issues regarding the development workshops? Or anyone else want to talk about some of the other, like the sort of baseline things, the YMCA, the low rises, anything like that?
I don't think anything that we haven't touched on. We
Okay.
pretty much touched on everything. The only one that we're waiting on is David Brown. The only thing that I would like to talk about the low rises, which is I would like them removed out the M&T loan. That's all I would have to say on that.
Yes. Yeah, we're going to talk about that after the grant writer position discussion on the agenda. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Okay, does anybody else want to add to the discussion on the development committee? I do want to ask one question because we were originally going to have those meetings at Wednesday at 5 o'clock, and now there's some discussion of having them at 6. So I think we need to make a decision and stick with that. So anybody want to just add to that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
can I propose that we make sure that all of our meetings start at the same time? So Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Our monthly meeting always happens Wednesdays at 6 p.m. And then our development meetings would also happen Wednesdays at 6 p.m. It seems like it's a better time for everyone. It's later, more people will come. And then also just would make sure we don't get confused about the timing. Just makes it easier. So I propose that.
Does that sound good for everybody? 6 o'clock?
A lot easier.
Wednesdays? Easier? Okay, good. So assuming that everybody's good with that, from here on out, we are publicly announcing that our development meetings will be at 6 p.m. Going forward. And that means that on the nights when we have a regular board meeting, if we need to have a development meeting, then we'll have to do it at 5 o'clock. So that will be the only exception to the rule, and we'll make that announcement the week prior. Okay, cool. Any other comments on the development committee and its work? Cool. All right, moving on. Ravonda, I know you wanted to talk about the potential of hiring a grant writer. Do you want to just kick that off? That
Yes,
conversation?
absolutely. So I feel like HHA should now look into getting a grant writer. I feel like it's a win-win. It's no lose. I feel like a lot of grants is going by us that we are not applying for. And to make it easier, sweeter, better, is just to hire a grant writer. That's where my mind is at.
That sounds like, I mean, it seems like it would be maybe, I mean, I wonder if like, just like with the accountant that we have, I wonder if there's, a grant writer who works for other authorities that would already know the whole field of what the grants are and what's available and like when, how to do it. So that makes sense to me.
That's a great idea. So does someone want to reach out to some of the other housing authorities to see, Ravonda, do you want to take that bull by the horns?
Absolutely. I would reach out to the housing authorities. I also have been getting quite a bit of information, Rebecca, as well, on grant writers that we've been looking at and going over their applications. We were blessed to be able to be sent a list of grant writers from HCHC because they put out a grant writer position and they hired one. So there was like 100 applications of people that they weren't able to hire. So we've been just scanning through all of those wonderful, amazing people. And yeah.
Yeah, I just want to note too that it's like a interesting mechanic, I think, especially for a housing authority, that there's a lot of like typical channels for financing. And then I feel like there's a lot of possibilities for like maybe financing where it wouldn't have been looked for before. And possibilities for like more creative financing. I feel like I've just looked at a lot of the grants that are out there and I feel like there's a lot of cases where we could very well be eligible. So just wanted to say it's a good idea.
I mean, the NYSERDA grant is a perfect example of that. As Michael said, it's not typically granted to housing authorities, but Randall and the mayor's office applied anyway, and it's a good thing they did. So yeah, non-traditional as well as traditional. And I know that there's a question also about hiring, where the money would come from. And so once we get to that point where we start talking about the M&T grant loan, FHA loan, I think we can begin to address that because I think there's scope for spending some of that money on a grant writer. So I'll get to that when we get to that. Does anyone else want to say anything about grant writers?
Tiffany's hand is up.
Okay.
Hi, my hand was up a little early. I just wanted to ask a question to the board. Has there been any plans to upgrade the playgrounds?
Nope.
No, there haven't been, but that's going to be part of
The
our
new
development,
development.
like 100%.
I think that's, yeah.
Well, maybe we should have that question also a part of the survey.
Definitely, like, I mean, in a whole development plan, there'll be like outdoor space will be a big part of it. Just how is the outdoor space being treated?
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other comments on the issue of the grant writer?
Can I just like ask for a point of clarification? So from my understanding, with grant writing, and I know Rebecca, you've written grants, pretty much pro bono, right, for the city. And so I kind of had this idea of grant writing as being like you pay someone to do the grant, but simultaneously they also get financing from the grant. And is that the case, or is that this is what I need clarification on?
I mean, in my experience, it's either or, either they get paid to write the grant, or they can do it on commission, essentially, like as part of to receive funding from the grant. But yeah, Tom has a different idea.
No, not different, just that some grant writers are also grant administrators, and that's where they can pick up a fee. But that's up to that's the decision of who they're writing for.
But I mean, well, I'm not sure what I think that having a person sort of on staff, as it were. It sounds like, I mean, I don't know if what we're talking about is like more of like having a freelancer that we bring in to do research. I mean, one thing that's like what we're really talking about is a grant researcher and grant writer. And I think that's really important actually to point out that we need somebody who can do research because, you know, it's, you don't like having just a grant writer would mean that we're like, hey, here's this grant we want you to apply for. And what we really need is somebody who's scouting and knows that field and, you know, knows what we need and things like that. So that's a little bit more involved. And so that might be just a matter of them meeting with us as a board on like a monthly or bi-monthly basis to kind of check in with us and see like, here's the range of possibilities and are any of these something that would make sense and things like that. I actually just, or go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just going to ask for Vonda, how is the HCHC structuring their grant writer? Are they in-house or is it yeah?
That I'm honestly uncertain about. I know that I have brought up, you know, looking into a grant writer, and I was informed that HCHC just hired a grant writer. So I was like, oh, well, maybe we can look at the people that didn't get hired. So I don't know really how they're working with this grant writer or anything. I don't know if maybe Claire, do you have any idea how it's going?
Yeah, so they put it out, and it's not somebody local, so it's I mean, we have the list. We can share the names of the folks and see if they'd be interested in working with HHA. But yeah, we're I'm not sure how the payment goes. I don't have much to do with that process, but I can get you guys the information.
Great. I'm guessing they're probably not HCHC employees, but that it's a contractor.
Yeah, yeah, it's a separate contractor.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what we would want to do. We would go with I mean, if to
Yeah.
hire someone as an internal staff, I think would be a level of commitment that we might not be able to achieve. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so I think this is obviously going to be something that we're going to be working on over the next 30 days then. So as a board, we'll discuss that further and have an update on that next month. Since we have a list and since HCHC has a list and they're willing to share it with us, that's a big thing that we don't have to do. So it allows us to really hit the ground running, I would imagine, because we can look at that list. All right. All right, does anybody else have any comments or questions on the grant writing?
I do have a question. Sorry, like this is maybe something I should really know already, but and maybe Tom, you're the one who can really answer it, maybe, or maybe Tim, I don't know. But just like, is there any relationship formally between HHA and the city, such that, for example, like, so I just asked in the last informal meeting, I just asked that the city appoint a grants commissioner because we have one supposed to be in play in our city code, but we haven't had a grants commissioner for as long as I've been around. So, and that person, that would be their job, would be, that's what they do. They basically scout for what the grants are that the city should be applying for, and then they instruct the grant writer to apply for those grants. But so I'm just thinking like, you know, two birds, one stone kind of situation. But I don't know if it would be like forbidden, verboten somehow.
I mean, is there any way of sorry?
I don't think a city grant writer could be writing grants.
No, I'm asking about the grants commissioner specifically.
Oh, well,
that if the grant, if there's a person whose role it is, you know, to really all they're doing is making, like making it their job to know what grants are available to be applied for. You know, that's.
well, sadly, that's what HDC used to do in Deshina. So
yeah,
they're gone, and I don't know how much she actually steered towards to the housing authority or not, but
I don't know.
Hmm.
Okay.
I don't think. Tim, are you aware of Sheena Salvino directing grants towards HHA in the last, well, when did she leave?
That was like 2 years ago or more.
Yeah, so that would have been back in 2018, really, 2018, 19.
No, she never did.
No, I don't think so either.
No.
Awesome. Okay. So
Okay. All right, any other comments on the issue of grant writer? This is obviously something we're all gonna have to follow up over the next few weeks. Any other comments or questions? All right, next item on the agenda is the M&T Bridge loan. Just a little bit of background. I know last month we started this conversation. Well, we started the conversation about a year ago, but last month we had sort of formulated a resolution that really, I think, was not fit for purpose because it was based on early thinking about what we were going to be doing, particularly with the regards to the low rises. So just a little background, we had originally, we have two sort of major issues. We've got the short-term needs at Bliss Towers and the elevator and the remaining 19, the final 19, I believe it is, apartments that need a full gut, which we cannot afford to do out of our current budget. So we were looking, the board has been looking at how we were going to meet these short-term needs, given that we have spent a significant amount of our operational budget. We're really winding it down because we spent quite a lot of money on the boilers and on the roof repair, and also on this, we've allocated money already for the 6 apartments that can be renovated in-house, the ones that we've talked about in the past. The original FHA proposal was to also renovate the low rises, which, as we all have talked about, we've decided that that is just too costly and that we're going to need that part of the baseline of the development is the rebuilding of those low rises. So there's really no need to apply for the extra money to do those renovations. So my proposal for the board is that we apply for a much smaller FHA loan rather than $3.5 million, $1.2 million. And $1.2 million would get us everything we need in the short term. It would get us a new elevator. It would allow us to allocate a sufficient amount of money to be able to do the final 19 that we would need to renovate to get to a 100% capacity. So we can use all of our apartments over, regardless of what we decide to do in the long term, get those online as quickly as possible. And it would also allow this board to be reimbursed for some of the money that we spent out of our operational budget so that we can maintain an emergency fund, which is absolutely essential for surprises. And right now we just really don't have the capacity. We don't have that emergency fund because we've been drawing it down for the last several months. So I'd like to propose at least that we in principle discuss doing a $1.2 million FHA loan. Now, as you know, it takes about 18 months for those loans to be processed, and we can't really wait 18 months. So M&T has offered to provide us what we have been talking about, either we call it a bridge loan or it's a line of credit that they would allocate to us within sort of the next, I think they said 60 days. Is that right, Tim? 60 days approximately that it would
Yes.
take once we decide to move forward? Okay, so we would actually be able to get those elevators up and running, start doing that work very quickly. In fact, we wouldn't have to wait for the FHA loan to be approved because that could take 18 months. And in that 18 months, we could find ourselves in trouble. So I think this is probably the best way forward to apply for a smaller loan, to get that to get the bridge loan. And then once we get the FHA loan, we pay off the bridge loan. And Tim, do you want to just describe sort of basically what that would look like? Because I'm not really a math person and so the technical stuff.
So the bridge loan would be an interest only for a period of 18 months or sooner, depending on how quickly the FHA application process goes through. So we'd be paying approximately a little over $3,000 a month in interest payments over the term of the bridge loan. And then, of course, the idea is that the full amount at the end of the term would be paid off through the FHA loan. And the FHA loan then would become permanent debt that would be amortized over a 35-year period. And then what those payments would look like, I'm not really sure, but they'd be, fairly low, a monthly payment over a 35-year period. Then, of course, and we posed this question to Darren, if we decided to do a larger project with a LIHTC, he seemed to think that we could work through that and have the LIHTC program take out that loan at some point as a possibility. He didn't seem too concerned about it.
Yeah, and that's an important point because since we haven't actually decided how we're going to proceed with the entire project, we would need to be able to have a way to pay off that loan fairly quickly if we needed to, and we could do that through the LIHTC loan, and that's why I asked him that question. That seems like that would be easy enough to do. So we wouldn't be stuck with that. If we, we would be able to pay it off through in the course of the larger project. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Could you just clarify in that scenario, what are the repairs that we're doing with that money?
So the two big ones, there's a couple of things. The two big ones that need to happen that we can't currently do because we don't have the budget is the replacement of the elevator. The elevator has been repaired so many times that there is now a concern that we could run into a situation where we are literally unable to repair the elevator. So the boxes and the mechanisms need to be replaced. And I have a figure here of approximately what that's going to cost because we've costed all of this out. In fact, we've had these numbers for quite some time. Hold on a second. I wrote it down. And I was like, oh, here we go. Nope, that's not it. Sorry, Tim, was it $475,000, I believe, for the replacement of the boxes and the mechanism? Yep. So that
470,000.
Okay, so that would be one of them. That's a pretty big expense, which we don't have the ability to pay in our current operational budget. And then the second one would be to rehab the final 19 apartments. So we have 25 apartments that need serious rehab, right? And asbestos remediation and various other rehabilitation. So 6 of those apartments, as you know, we're currently working on. We have budgeted for because we can rehab those apartments within our current budget. But there are 19 apartments that just require so much work that we need additional funding to do those. And that, I believe, for those 19 is 460,000.
Yes.
Rebecca,
approximately.
Okay, Rebecca, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, okay, so I just want to say, fully support getting this loan. I think this is definitely a better formation of this than we had prior. But, there's a couple of things that I think we need to just polish up, figure out exactly our numbers on this because, we keep talking about these units, right? And I just really want us to be very clear on how many units we're really talking about here. The 25 unit number, 6 of those units were in the low rises. So that was 19 units, okay? 7 out of those 19 units were said that they could be renovated without a full gut.
Mhm.
Okay. So
I think that was 6, right?
was it
No, it
6?
was 7.
Oh, it was
6.
7. Okay. Okay.
That's why I paused for a moment because I was like,
6.
was one of them in the low rises? But I can definitely find out the exact number. But like now we're at 12 apartments that need full gut renovation. But recently, it was learned that there are additionally 6 other apartments that people have moved out of. So there are another 6 apartments here. And then, additional to that, we do have 3 units that are being used for storage at this time. And so I'm just wondering if, we have this number that keeps increasing, decreasing. Can we get a larger number here? Can we make this like 22 units? Like we had 19 units. Let's make those 3 storage units apartments again. Let's get those online. Now we have 22 units that we're actually getting online at this time. 7 or 6 of which won't need a full gut remediation. I just wanted to propose this because I want us to be very firm on what this number is, what we're telling the public,
I think we should actually just get a list of the apartments, like, so we don't have to just kind of throw this abstract number, I'm sure we already have the list, but I just mean like, let's like nail it down. Like, these are the apartments that are gonna, and this is the work, and just kind of have it, so that we don't, I think what happens is like in our conversations, we reach for a factoid, but like there just needs to be an actual list that's like, and that's what this is.
Yeah. And these are like, this is, I just found out yesterday that there were 6 additional apartments that people had moved out of, and we had this working number for a while with the photographs and the evidence of the states of all of these apartments. So I'm just proposing that we add more to that list here, and add more apartments to that list so we can make sure that we're housing as many people as possible. And one of the things that I really do want to say is like, when we're getting this loan, I think having this magnification for where this money is going to go is pivotal on this. We need to know what's going on with this money. We have a bunch of materials that have already been purchased, and so I want us to do this in a really clear, systematic way. So, everything is just very clear on where all of the spending is happening. Because this is public money and public resources, and that's our job to do so. So, yeah.
So just also to be aware that we don't have to spend the entire, I mean, the key here with regards to the bridge loan, because that's the money that we would be spending initially, right? Not the actual FHA loan, which comes later, that would pay the bridge loan back. We don't have to use all of that, or we can use all of that.
Yeah.
So there's some flexibility in terms of how much of that money we use. And the other thing to also keep in mind is that that bridge loan is supposed to also help pay ourselves back for some of the money that we took out of our operational budget to do some of the emergency repairs. So it frees up money for the board to be able to do things like hire grant writers, for example. So it allows for a little bit of leeway for us to spend some of the money that we spent earlier on. It allows us to claw some of that money back too. So I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Really, I totally support this loan. We need this loan. I just want to make sure that we have keen oversight and we know exactly what we're spending it on, and that we can use it to make as many apartments available as possible. I did have one other question just looking over the document from M&T. Is it, because it says Tim as the borrower, it's your name. And I was just wondering, like, how does that work? I was just confused when I saw that.
I have no idea why they have it like that. I didn't write it. They just put it in there, but we'd have to have Mike take a look at it, and he would probably have to make some adjustments, our attorney. I don't know why they have it like that.
Yeah, I think that'd be
It should be HHA.
Yeah, that'd be a pretty important thing to clarify here, because
Yeah,
it looks like you're borrowing.
Yeah, right. I know. I did notice that too.
Yeah, sorry. And can I just say, we're not gonna approve this resolution. This is just a document that they get sent to us. I think what we need to actually do, and that's what Tim and I are gonna do, is reach out to M&T Bank, tell them what we want, and then they're going to have to draft a new set of documents that look a bit like the ones that we got last month that are very legalese, but they would have to redraft them to reflect our current thinking. And I'd like to recommend that if we can in principle agree to this tonight, then we can ask them to get us a new set of documents and then have a special meeting sometime in the next couple of weeks to approve the new documents or to at least review them. That should give Mike some time to review the new documents. And I think that M&T Bank will work pretty quickly on this because the documents, it's just a question of changing the numbers for them. So I mean, I don't know if how the board feels about doing that, but if we can agree in principle, then we can get the actual documents and then sit down and look at them in a couple of weeks and have a special meeting.
Can
So
I
I
just
just-
Marie, if the board is in favor of doing that, M&T would redraft an LOI and associated documents, and then I'll prepare revised resolutions for circulation to the board to review.
And can we just make sure we have those resolutions, at least a week before we're voting on them, if possible? Just because last time it was just, we only had
Yeah.
a couple hours.
It all depends on when I get the documents to actually work on them. So
Yeah.
yes, I mean, as soon as I get them, I will turn them around as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we'll give ourselves a week to look at them.
But obviously we want this loan, and yeah, as the loan going to the housing authority, I'm fully in support of that.
Any, Ravonda, did you want to say something? Did you have your hand up?
No, I did not. Sorry.
Marie, you're muted.
Anybody else have any questions? No. Okay, so I would just like to propose that in principle, we would like to move forward with an FHA loan for $1.2 million so that we can conduct the work that we need to do for the short term for Bliss Towers. And then we will have M&T draft up the new documents. We will send them to the board a week prior so that the board has enough time to review them. And then we will have a special meeting sometime between now and March to vote on those documents. So I would, if people are ready to agree to that in principle, I'd like to make a resolution to move forward like that, in that manner. Does that make sense?
Let's
that-
do it.
It's kind of an inelegant resolution, but I think makes sufficient sense. So I'd like to propose that we in principle accept, move forward with an FHA loan of $1.2 million and a bridge loan from M&T that we could use before, while we're waiting for the FHA loan to be completed. Can I have, well, I'll make the resolution. Can I make the resolution and then have a second? Or, yeah.
What?
Are
I'll,
you making a resolution? Okay.
yeah, I'll make the resolution to do that and have, oh gosh, I forgot your exact wording. I'm so sorry. I should just write it.
I think, Mike, you got this, right? Mike, are you there?
Did I get what?
Did you hear what I just said? That we're making a
No.
resolution? Okay, so I'll just say it again. We're making a resolution to, in principle, accept the, to move forward in principle with the $1.2 million FHA loan and to request a $1.2 million bridge loan while we're waiting for the FHA loan. And that we are going to accept in principle this tonight, and then the documents are going to be drafted by M&T. You're going to review them. Then you're going to mail them, those documents to, send them to the board. The board will have a week to review, and then we'll meet up again to approve the actual documents.
the longest resolution ever.
It is the most inelegant resolution ever, but as as long as it makes sense. Does that make sense, Mike?
Yeah, and can we just, oh, sorry.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
And let's
That's
just
fine.
make sure with the wording, that, yeah, it's to the housing authority.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that needs to. Well, Tim could take out a $1.2 million loan and give it to us, I suppose, but I don't know that I would recommend that. But yeah, okay. So does anyone want to make that motion? Rebecca,
I'll make that
do,
motion.
do I have a second?
I, Rebecca Wolf, second it.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Okay, resolution passes. Okay, thank you very much.
Woohoo.
Woohoo, indeed. Okay, there's a big move. There's a big thing. This is great news. I'm very pleased. Okay, we've actually, moving on to the next item, we've actually talked about the public outreach campaign. Is there anything else anybody wants to add to that? Or I'm just gonna move right on to the HUD's 5-year plan requirements. Okay, so, Tim, we actually have a requirement, that we have to do a 5-year plan for HUD. And, Tim is gonna introduce that because I think it's all new to us. So Tim, if you don't.
Yes, there's a statutory requirement by HUD for all housing authorities. They have to submit a 5-year plan, and it's on a standardized form, which I submitted to everyone. It's in a draft format. I started the process just to give everyone an idea of what we should be looking at. We can certainly add and revise it, an amendment. I think Rebecca Bohr has suggested that we conduct a special meeting so we can have some community engagement, resident engagement as to our goals and objectives for the next 5 years, which it makes absolute sense. So we can talk about when we want to have that special meeting. Then once we finalize the 5-year plan, there's a 45-day statutory public comment period, followed by a public hearing. Then after the public hearing, the board would approve or adopt the 5-year plan, and then we would go ahead and submit it to HUD, and we would keep it in our file.
Can I just add to this, especially looked over the 5-year plan, and I think, it's about time to have a special meeting to discuss publicly, this plan, but also our policies, our board policy, some of the things outlined in, our personnel policy, the policy for the board. There's a couple of documents that I think haven't gotten a look over for a couple of years. And I think, no better time than now. So I would say we should set a special meeting in order to really go over policy. That's what I would suggest.
Does it have to be a special meeting, or could we or do you just think that we have too much in our regular meetings to do?
I think we'd have to do it as a special meeting, right? Because we would be voting. And in our regular meeting, that would mean we're waiting another month. I mean, it just really depends on what we all want to do and how we want to do this. I know that, we can't meet every day, even if I might want to.
But, Tim, when is this? What's the timeline for this in terms of when it needs to be submitted to HUD?
Well, the pandemic has pushed everything back. So, I think when we get it completed, we submit it to HUD. I think they've waived any deadline periods because of the pandemic. So they're working with the housing authorities. So,
okay.
Can I ask how late are we?
What's that?
How late are we on this?
Well, we're not necessarily late. They've pushed it back until 2021. So they're asking housing authorities to complete the 5-year plan in 2021.
When was the last time we completed it, I guess is the question.
Yeah, good question. It was done by my predecessor. So I believe it was done before I got here. I tried to locate that 5-year plan. I couldn't find it. So I don't know what was in that 5-year plan or, you know, when it was submitted, but I believe it was submitted. It was a 2015 to 2020, I think, period.
Can we get that from HUD? The one that was written 5 years ago? They would have that on file, correct?
I can find out, sure.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be good to see what was done the last time around.
I just want to know also, just touching on the idea of whether or not to have the special meeting, I guess it would just be a way that we could have a completely focused meeting around policy, so that we would be able to discuss it with, you know, whoever shows up, residents, you know, interested parties in the HHA, you know, to really kind of overhaul stuff that just is, you know, hasn't had eyes on it for a while. I think it would be good.
Also, I think that it folds in nicely with the work that we're going to be doing with regards to this development plan, because obviously part of our 5-year plan is what we're going to be doing with the development. I mean, they're inextricably linked, these things. So I think that we could potentially look at how do we fold the 5-year plan requirements into our outreach when we're looking at the development plan. How do we marry the two? So that we're not doing outreach for the development plan and doing outreach for the 5-year plan, if you see what I mean, if we can do them together. Since I don't see how they're really that separate anyway. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's really cool also to allow this 5-year plan to also be something that's holding us accountable to our development plan as well. So,
yep. Okay, so Tim, you're gonna try to see if you can get us a copy of the original of the last 5-year plan.
Yes.
And then I think we can next week at the development meeting, if we do have HCHC come and talk to us about the outreach that we're going to do, we can actually start to plan that out too. Alongside that, we can start to see what the scope of work is, because I mean, we haven't, you know, we really need to scope this out as well. What can we fold into our, you know, outreach for the development plan? We can start talking about that next week. Does that make sense?
I just have a quick question. So if like, you know, we had people that were experts in, you know, policy issues to come and assist us pro bono for something like that, is that within the realm of possibility? Are there any issues that we encounter there? I guess this question would be directed to Mike or Tim.
Can you be more specific when you say any issues by having? I'm not certain of the exact question.
Like, do we specifically have to, like, is it okay to have someone come in that is an expert in policy and help us to look through our policies and see where things might be outdated, things might need to change, etc.? Because if not, then it would be great to have a couple of experts. I can think of a couple of people that might be open to doing a little, you know, just assist us with this, volunteer to assist us with this. I just want to make sure that that's okay.
I can't tell you definitively, but off the top of my head, I can't have any reason why you couldn't have someone come in to assist with guiding modification of any policies or procedures. That being said, obviously you can't make any changes and they can't have any authority to make any changes, but
yeah,
they could obviously help to guide any changes which would have to be acted through the board.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I just wanted to check in on that. That's great. Thanks.
Anybody else want to say anything about the 5-year plan or have any questions? Okay, well, thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is report of resident commissioner. Robert, Do you have anything you'd
Good
like
evening.
to add? Good evening.
No, my question, all this sounds great right now, but my question is, where do the safety of the tenants come in? Like, where does that take precedence? Like, all this sounds good, but like right now, we have kids hanging in the stairway, urinating, eating and leaving garbage, smoking, and we live in a smoke-free building. The tenants are complaining because the smoke is getting into their house and they have asthma. So now how do we deal with this? Because every time I bring this up, oh, we can't this, we can't this, we can't that. What can we do with this? How can we deal with this?
Claire, you had some thoughts on this last month. Do you want to talk to this a little bit?
I can, but I mean, I have the same thoughts as last month. I understand the concerns, and I think that I mean, I guess Robert, since he lives in the building, is probably, I mean, if this is what you're hearing, then I mean, I'm not the leadership of Bliss. So I mean, I gave my suggestions. I don't think that I don't know what to do about the kids. I don't know what's been offered since last meeting. I don't know what's been tried since last meeting out of the suggestions that we've given. But I mean, I I don't know. The fact that this keeps coming up as something that is a main concern of the tenants just kind of solidifies the fact that we need to hurry up and get on the ground and actually talk to the tenants to see what are their actual concerns.
I mean, because I be out of town. I come back and I'm getting stopped. As soon as I come in the building, oh, they were in the hallway yesterday. The hallway was smelling of a pot. It was in the stairway. And so I'm like, listen, go to the office, write a complaint, and let the board hear this. Because again, me bringing it to you guys is one thing. Them bringing it to you, maybe somebody can get wind of it and really,
Right. So I
make the
mean,
ball roll. Because I don't know what else to
I would
do. And again, they tell me this constantly.
I would suggest giving them the actual grievance policy and letting them learn the proper way to file a complaint, so that it doesn't keep coming from you. And then if they pile up as the same concern from more than one person, I think that we'll see a pattern and it'll make more sense to the leadership to follow through on it. And it's also empowering them to learn the process of how to advocate for themselves if something's not going right. I think that the problem becomes if it's one or two or even three of the same tenants telling you the same thing often. Like it could be a neighbor's issue. You know what I mean? We have no idea because you live in the building, we don't
But
live in the building.
these
We
are
have
these
to
are these are
create
these are
track-
kids from outside. These are not our tenants. These are
I
kids
understand
from outside.
Right,
And
I understand
the
what
tenants
you're
are
saying.
there. Are some of them are still awake. They don't want to come out. When they come out at 9 o'clock to take out their garbage, they got the kids in the stairway, doing their thing. And it's more than one. It's like 4 or 5 tenants. I've had tenants call me. I wasn't even in town, and they calling me, telling me this stuff.
I understand what you're saying.
I
So I
mean,
think that I think maybe if Tim or somebody could forward everybody on the board what the actual grievance policy is, so that if tenants come to us with complaints, we streamline the way that we're gonna go forward with handling tenant complaints and actually making effort to address them. I think with the tenants relations committee, that's gonna make it easier for it not to just be Robert hearing the complaints. We'll see the grievances. We can go over the grievances and decide what to do with them as they come, so that it's not so much like
but
rumors. You know what I mean?
to tell you the truth, I didn't mean to cut you off, but to tell you
That's
the
fine.
truth, when I say this to them, I say, listen, go right there, grab a complaint form, fill it out, drop it in the slot. Their response is, I don't want the negative. I don't want the negative feedback that might come with this. I'm like, don't worry about it. If you feel uncomfortable about something, speak on it. You know,
Yeah,
a
and
lot
it's
of
a
lot of
different.
tenants, for whatever reason, they feel they don't want to be known that they're complaining and things like that. You know, this
Well,
is a
there
lot of stuff that. But
that
that
that's why the to have the grievance policy is helpful, because it's non-retaliatory, and it's not going to go to, it doesn't have to go through the office staff. It would come to us as a tenant relations committee. We would be the ones in charge of that, which is different than what it has been. So it's new faces that are making it clear that we are the people that want to help resolve the issues. We have no bias. We don't know the history of the tenants. We don't see what their day-to-day or monthly interactions are. We don't know their personal information. Like, we're learning the tenants, and we're we're starting a process of recreating what their living environments are going to be. So we're starting on a brand new foot. So also, to the other end of that, if they're not willing to make a written complaint, then that says something also. So we just have to all get on the same page about the process. So if somebody could forward the board the policy of what the grievance is, the grievance process is, and we all become aware of it. And as tenants come to us, we just decide that we're making an agreement tonight that this is how we're going to move forward as a board. I think you'll see a big difference in what the complaints are, how the complaints come through, and it'll alleviate some stress on you feeling like you have to report to the board in this way.
Just want to note that that's a really, big issue when people don't feel like they can say their grievances without, having, negative impacts towards them. And that's specifically something that we need to change, especially because we're looking for input of our residents, right? And this is a really big problem, that there's a precedent here where people feel like their complaints are not going to be heard, or even worse, that they're going to receive negative things happening based on those complaints. So this is something that I think we really need to address. And specifically to what Claire's saying too, I remember reading over our grievance policy. There's one in the personnel policy, but there was also one in the board policy, the specific policy for the board of commissioners. And that I could only find it on the HHA website, and it's not there anymore. So Tim, would you be able to forward me the board policy? Because I just, like, I've looked for it really everywhere, and I
Okay.
can't find
Yep.
it. So
I'll
please
send it to
email
you.
me that, because this is like really speaking to a larger issue here, which is really about having our residents feel like they're able to air their grievances in a way that's safe for them. And so, you know, there's a lot here to really begin speaking about, and I think one of the important things is to really go over our policy. What is our policy for personnel? What is our policy for the board? What are the rules that we're under here? Because there are scenarios where I think it's and Mike Bruno, if you're still here, hello.
I'm here.
Okay, yeah, I just want to ask, because like, if there's scenarios where people are being mistreated or treated unfairly based on our policies, does that leave us open to like legal ramifications, basically?
I'm not certain that I can answer that question because it's very, very broad. I mean,
If the policy is broken, let's say, like there's something in the policy that's like treating people with respect or something like that, right? So like, let's say if something like that that's specifically in the policy isn't happening or isn't being maintained, does that leave us open to legal recourse? I just, because the policy is there
I
to
think
protect
something
us.
that broad. The policies and procedures are there to regulate the interactions and operation of the housing authority. So if there is an intentional breach of a policy or procedure by representatives or agents for the authority, then yes, in theory, that could open the authority up to legal causes of action. You know, I mean, your particular example, I don't believe would create any cause of action legally, because it's far too broad. But you know, you'd have to have very specific
I'm just, yeah, I'm just curious
intentional
about
breach.
this.
But yes, does it open, is there a potential there could be a violation that could lead to a cause of action? Sure.
I mean, this is a really important aspect to bring up, right? When we're talking about residents that feel like if they complain, they're going to face negative ramifications. Like, this is, this is needed to be
I
brought
don't,
up.
Rebecca, I don't know that,
Rebecca, to be specific, residents feeling like they can't complain is a very different, I'm not saying it's not important, because it's certainly important, and I think very important to the Housing Authority Board. But to your question, resident feeling like they can't complain is very different from a resident complaining and then having retribution against them.
Yeah.
I just want to draw the distinction there.
I think it's important for us to just like acknowledge as a board that the policies, we need to go over the policies as soon as possible, because also some of the complaints that we do receive from the tenants are urgent, and they are policy questions, and they're things that we need to, as a board, decide. Again, like, we're creating this new vision and we're asking tenants to be a part of it. Like, we have to reintroduce what this board means and what our positions are in the community. So we're setting a precedent all around the board. And I think that it's urgent. So back to what Rebecca was saying earlier, I think that a special meeting is necessary so we can just figure it out and have a policy that's legal and that we can stand behind as a board, and honestly see where each other is at with what's in the policy, because we haven't really had much time to engage with each other, and we're going into a huge project. So I mean, sitting down and going over some policies, and especially hearing from Edric and Robert about their take on it, because I know that there's a lot of tenants that I've talked to about their lease, and there's a lot of things in the lease that they don't necessarily pay as much attention to, that they kind of skim over and sign because they know they have to sign. So this conversation needs to happen as soon as possible.
so do we want to schedule, I'm very conscious of the fact that we've got the weekly meetings at 6 o'clock. Do we want to schedule our first? Okay, right. So actually, we could do this, because what we could do is we could fold in our first discussion on policy with a quick vote on the revised M&T loan, and I think that would work out really well. So I'm wondering if we should just make a decision now. I don't want to overdo it, but I do want to make sure that we get the development meetings in as well. So we might have to have two meetings one day, a development meeting. Well, no. Should we just say in 2 weeks, we're going to have a policy meeting where we are also going to look at the M&T, the final resolution? Just propose that now and do it at 6 o'clock at night. And we can figure out some way to fold that maybe into the development meeting, or maybe we do the development meeting at 7 o'clock. I don't know, but can we just agree that in 2 weeks we'll meet again and start this conversation about policy? And then we can also begin to look at, Robert, how we're going to, in the meantime, we're going to look at the grievance policy and figure out a way to help you to deal with this problem. Does that
It's
work
not
for
helping
you?
me. It
No,
really
I
is not
mean,
helping me, because
no, I
I
understand.
sleep well every night. But my problem is, if these guys are complaining to me and I bring it to you guys, it keeps getting swept under the rug. These people are feeling a weight about these kids being in the hallway smoking, and the maintenance men are tired of cleaning up urine. So I mean, what are we
Well, it's
supposed
not
to do
getting
about
swept
this? We
under the
keep pushing
rug.
it,
It's just we don't know what to
you
do.
know, but
Exactly.
we need to come up with something. We need to focus on it
Well,
because
that's what we're gonna do in 2 weeks.
the maintenance men shouldn't have to go in the hallways every other day and sweep up and mop up urine because we got kids sitting and hanging out in the stairway.
Robert,
They
there's a
shouldn't be cleaning up urine.
Would it be helpful to, Robert, would it be helpful if there was a thing where like they could write down their complaints, but then those forms would just come directly to us?
That's
Is
what
that-
we were saying about having the whole process streamlined to
Right.
the tenant relations board. Like,
Mhm.
I
don't
just
turn
mean
it
like
into
in
Right.
the
the
short
office.
term, like before we even got that all set up, would it just be helpful to kind of like have that happen so that we can kind of really review the
You know, I have to go to what Claire said. You know, people feel comfortable talking to certain people. It's just that way for whatever reason. You know,
Mhm.
I'm not from Hudson. You know, not being funny and not saying it in a bad way, but everybody here done grew up with each other. Everybody done shook hands and broke bread with each other. So everybody feels comfortable with each other in a certain way.
Mhm.
You know, fortunately, I've been here 5 years, and the people that I do deal with, I have no problem with dealing with. The people that don't deal with me are those in that building, like I said, that are problematic, and they don't like the fact that I speak my mind. And if I see them in a bad situation, I confront them about it, and not in a bad way or nothing. So I said to say, people just don't feel comfortable with everybody exposing what they want to talk about. And Claire knows this, and everyone else knows this. You have people that will go to Claire about certain things. You have the people that will come to me about certain things. That's
Right.
just what it is.
But we have to
And they
stay
just
up. We
don't
have
feel
to,
comfortable.
yeah, but we have to introduce ourselves as a unified front. Like, we have to let them know that like we appreciate that trust and we honor that trust, but like if this is something that you're genuinely concerned about, the only way that we can address it is if you put it
Hmm.
down and send it through this process,
Yep.
because it leaves us in a shaky situation
If we
where
don't.
it could become he said she said. Like,
Yep.
just for instance, let's say the kids belong to somebody that you don't get along with, then it looks like something completely different. You know what I mean?
Yep.
If we're going
Right.
after, we have to have, and if the tenant can tell us, then we want them to stand behind it and just give us a record so that the first time you put it down on paper, something may not happen. But when 3 and 4 times hit and we realize that this is something that not only needs to be figured out immediately, but needs to be figured out in the most respectful way, like it all makes sense, and that's just how things happen with anything. There has to be process. So like,
Mhm.
yes, in the city of Hudson, it's families and friends and relationships, but we're a board and we're setting up practices so that the way that Bliss Towers has been run is not the way that we continue going forward, because it hasn't been the best or the easiest on the tenants. They have reasons that they're picking and choosing who they want to talk to because they don't trust the people that have been working in the office. So we're reestablishing a connection with them. And by doing that, we have to do some things different. And I mean, when it comes to the kids in the stairways, I'll just say, like, I know as long as I'm on the board, we're going to take as many steps necessary before having to call somebody else to handle youth.
Yeah.
Specifically, like, we're not calling police on kids. Like,
No.
that's not a thing that's gonna happen, or that I would be comfortable even suggesting as a solution. I think that we can figure it out beyond that. And I think that communicating with each other, even if you get a complaint, Robert, and you just email the board about it before the board meeting, until we have the process set up, that might change something also.
I mean, because I know the kids, from the youth center. And when I see them, I'm like, yo, so and so. Come on, man. You know the tenants complaining. All right, Rob, but it's cold outside. We got nowhere to go. Can we just chill here? We're gonna smoke and we're gonna leave. I'm like, come on, the tenants are complaining about the smoke. You know, I mean, like you said, there's only but so much you can actually do. And I try to talk to them, and I understand it's cold. I was a kid. I know what that's like. But right now, you shouldn't be in a hallway grouped up with a bunch of your buddies smoking with this stuff going on. That's the first problem. But then you're in a hallway confined in a little corner in a little square, and the smoke is going into other tenants, not other tenants, but into the tenants' apartment. And then you got tenants that want to come out and go to the garbage or whatever, go to the elevator, and kids is coming out of the stairway or getting off the elevator going in the stairway. So that it's really crazy.
I just want to note that Pauline in the chat made a suggestion to hire a part-time licensed security guard, which is actually a suggestion that Ravonda made months ago as well.
Yeah.
And so just to say that, let's make it so if this is what residents want, that this isn't something that just floats around, but like we actually get
Right.
it done. Because it seems like a part-time licensed security guard would be the way, because Robert, it shouldn't, be on you to continually come to us like this as a commissioner,
It
so
was brought up before to get a security guard when I used to have the tenant meetings like last year and the year before.
Yeah.
Tenants approved of it. They agreed to having a
They
security
did.
guard.
Yeah,
What
so
happened with that?
They
I don't
do.
know.
we gotta just do it.
But
I
That's
don't
what
know
we
what happened, but
but
that
also,
disappeared.
So how
well,
does that
there's other concerns too. So it'd be making sure that with respect to the tenants, we weigh both options, because there were plenty of tenants who felt targeted by security officers. So what does it mean to have a security officer in the building? Can we look for a resource officer? Can we look for
Exactly.
somebody with that understands things like restorative justice and making sure that the tenants' needs are first, and it's not always punitive, and it's about the safety over catching people doing the wrong thing? Like, before we agree to that, we also need to entertain those conversations, which would all come up in policy.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
I mean, that's all I ask. Where's the safety part coming at? That's all I'm concerned about. That's all I ask. Because again, some folks just don't feel safe. And at one point, people was like, "Yes, this place I feel real comfortable. I'm happy the place is the way it is." It's starting to go backwards. So that's
So I
my
think
that's my input for now.
So I think we've kind of decided that what we're certainly going to do is going to explore. First, we need the grievance policy. I think all the board members need a copy of that grievance policy. And then we need to start talking about, are we going to explore a resource officer? And I think I agree with absolutely everything Claire is saying. We really need to look at that through the lens of the the tenant relations board. And we do need to move on that. You're right, Robert. We have we have not done that yet, and we do have a lot on our plate, but we are going to get on that. And I think in 2 weeks, when we start to deal with policy, we're going to start to look at that too.
Marie, Tiffany has
We
her hand up.
promise. Sorry, Tiffany. Yes, I don't see your video. I don't know why. Sorry, Tiffany. Tiffany, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry.
Did you
Said
want to?
regular? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I would like to applaud and agree with everything that Claire said. It needs to be policies in place so the procedure is done correctly and not just off of a word. Everything has to have protocol. Also, if you all would take a look and if you're making partners with people in the city, look at the youth department, people that the young people can connect to. Right now, we're dealing with so many hard times, especially when the government is planning on making marijuana recreational throughout the state. And right now, medical marijuana is legal. So I don't know how you all are approaching that with people that have medical issues that are using medical marijuana to help them with their issues. So you all need to take a look at all of that as well. I'm pretty sure you would have wonderful people in the city that can work for you all or even volunteer to work with the children. We have, what is that program that Malachi Walker works with? Mental risk mentors. He's a mentor. He can probably suggest people, young people that can communicate to the young ones.
Tiffany, could you send us Malachi's contact details?
I sure can.
Yeah, I have that too.
Oh, great. Claire, that was you that just spoke, right? You have his details?
Rebecca.
Oh, that was Rebecca. Okay. Cool.
I mean, his information is also on the city's website, you know, if anybody can get to it.
Just to add to what Tiffany said, I know that the youth department has gone through a whole restorative justice training. So that is really.
I mean, times are changing, so you all need to look at all these different avenues that are here. And like Robert said, the people in the community, particularly in Bliss Towers, they're born and raised here. Just like if we were to move to any other city, we're dealing with people that are born and raised here. So we have to take all these things in consideration and not just come in an aggressive manner because you are the board. You know, we're here to change the lines and the ways of communication so people can feel comfortable not only going to board members, but comfortable going inside that office as well. And just one more point I would like to add. I would like the board members to please take a look at the numbers. I'm hearing from residents that their stimulus checks are being added to their rent. And I pray that that is not true. So please look into that.
Yes, I've been hearing the same. I'm also hearing that people's unemployment, the extra monies that they are receiving is being added in as well. I was actually going to contact you about that tomorrow, Tim. I learned that this evening.
I'll look at that tomorrow, Ravonda.
Also, please let me know the answer to my question when you look into it, because that is very disturbing to hear that people's stimulus checks are being forced to being submitted towards their rent. I think that there's some legal ramifications there that needs to be checked out. So please contact me when you look into that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And frankly, I don't think the top up should be added to the rent either.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. So, okay, we're gonna follow up on that ASAP. Okay, I would like to, are there any comments or questions from the community, from the audience? Public comment? Is there anyone who would like to say anything? No? You sure? Going once?
There
Okay.
are comments in the chat.
Yes.
Which can be entered into the record.
Absolutely.
Just because it is public comment.
Yep. Okay.
I do have, I know.
Okay, chat.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I do have one more. As for these apartments that, you know, we're getting online, we really do need, you know, a public update on the state of these apartments, as we've talked about in the past. And so I just want to make sure that we're going to get this update, you know, from what you know, I learned when I spoke with Tim, there was, we had the variance issue. We got through that issue, but now we have the issue of finding a contractor that will actually do the work that the variance requires. And so am I just right in saying that that's why we don't have those apartments online right now?
Yes, that's correct. As a matter of fact, I spoke with the contractor just before the meeting. He said that he would have the proposal tomorrow. He had to check with the environmental agency that wrote the variance to get an interpretation of what they actually wanted him to do, so he could write it up accurately in his proposal. And so he'll be sending that to me tomorrow. As soon as I get that, I will forward it to the board, you and the board.
And so this environmental agency, was it a state or federal agency or a third party?
It's the state Department of Labor.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, please forward that to all of us so we know, and we can give
Yep.
some updates on that, because that's a really big component here. Thanks.
Yep.
Are there any more comments from either the board or the public? Does somebody have a hand up? Because I can't see all of the video for some
Tiffany's
reason.
hand is up, but it might just still be up from before. I don't know.
Tiffany, did you want to add something? Okay, assuming that I'm just gonna give it another 30 seconds. If there's no one else that wants to add anything, I'd like to make a motion to say goodnight and end the meeting. And we will schedule a meeting for 2 weeks to talk about the policy and the M&T loan. Okay. All right, can I get a resolution to call to end the meeting? Is that the right way to put it?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Can I get a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, well, thank you very much, everybody. Have a lovely evening, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks or next week. If you
Good
come to
night,
our
everyone.
and come
See
to
you
our
next week.
development meeting next week. Okay. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you.